Hello and welcome to TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya and this is Break the Fake. A Russian Il-76 cargo plane just landed in Venezuela. Nothing unusual? Well, think again. Investigators from the Inform Napalm project say this aircraft belongs to Aviaconceitotrans, a company under international sanctions. The same company whose planes keep showing up in places where only the boldest or the most lawless dare to fly. What was inside this time? No one's saying. But given this airline's track record, experts do suspect it wasn't just duty-free luggage. Aviaconceitotrans calls itself an international cargo carrier. In reality, it delivers weapons to places where explosions are more common than football matches. The company's been sanctioned for arms smuggling for years, but it seems that's only boosted its fame. Internationally known and forever flying. In theory, though, sanctions should ground such operators. In practice, Aviaconceitotrans proves that as long as you never land, you never stop. And the timing? Curious. The flight comes just as rumors swirl about a possible U.S. operation against Venezuela. Maybe it's a coincidence. Or maybe that Il-76 wasn't just bringing support, unless, of course, you count a few tons of 120-millimeter persuasion. It seems that Russian planes now operate as an aerial version of the phrase, quote, nothing happened. They flew in, unloaded, flew away, and no explanations were given. And for Russia itself, the story is a perfect illustration of double standards. On the one hand, the country officially talks about fighting for peace. And on the other, its planes peacefully transport weapons to places where that peace ends. Check this. Well-known Maria Zakharova, who serves as the director of the Information and Press Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, recently said, "The country is mired in debt. An unprecedented reduction in social spending is on the agenda. But instead of focusing on real problems, the authorities are busy looking for funds for militaristic adventures in an arms race." She said it referring to, well, France.
Давайте судить по делам. Вот дела у них такие. И они подтверждают, что в Париже готовятся, причем целенаправленно, к долгосрочному противостоянию с Россией. Нацелены на эскалацию украинского конфликта. С одной стороны, требуют себе некое место за столом переговоров, а с другой стороны, обеспечивают себе места в милитаризующихся предприятиях, экономике и так далее. Для кого не секрет, что Франция не может выбраться из затяжного внутриполитического кризиса. Страна погрязла в долгах, на повестке дня беспрецедентное сокращение социальных расходов. Но вместо того, чтобы сосредоточиться на реальных проблемах, власти озабочены тем, где бы еще найти средства на свои милитаристские авантюры, на гонку вооружений. Продолжая нагнетать в обществе панические настроения из-за мнимой российской угрозы, всеми способами они пытаются, опять же, залезть в карман своих граждан, которые и так сталкиваются с нарастающими социально-экономическими трудностями.
And meanwhile, in Russia itself, the economy is struggling to stay afloat. But Zakharova doesn't actually mention that now, does she? After 3 years of growth, the military industry has entered a recession. Metallurgy and armored vehicle production, which until recently were growing at a rapid pace, have now taken a slight step back. Russia's metal production, once boasting a 31.6% rise in 2024, suddenly hit the brakes, down 1.6% in September. And it's the same scenario with tanks and armored vehicles, from speeding ahead at 61% growth in August to a quite modest 6% in September. That's 10 times less. Looks like Russia's armored vehicle factories have begun celebrating International Production Reduction Day. Once the pride and the main driver of the economy, the defense industry is now dragging the figures down. Overall industrial growth, barely 0.3%. That's quite the fall from 2024's 5% glory. The reasons are pretty clear. Budget deficits, oil revenues down to 21%, and shrinking government funds. The Kremlin is forced to curb spending. Even military orders are no longer saving the economy. Somewhere in the accounting departments of Russia's military-industrial complex factories, someone is probably sighing nostalgically for the days when more tank production actually meant more GDP growth. Those days, though, it seems, well, are gone. As a result, the situation looks like a classic example of an economic paradox. Russia is pouring billions into its arms race, while the economy itself is barely staying afloat. The irony? The Kremlin is giving France heat for excessive social spending. Meanwhile, its own social budget is shrinking faster than its oil revenues. So, while Zakharova lectures others on financial discipline, Russian tanks are left counting their own metal by the kilogram. Recently, Belarusian authoritarian leader Alexander Lukashenko officially unveiled the Minsk City Center for Technical Creativity for Children and Youth. While the children stared with interest at 3D printers and robots, the head of state decided to tell his, quote, honest truth about adult life. Belarusians should not hope for higher salaries.
В правильном направлении двигаетесь. Знаете, меня не покидает одна мысль. Вот часто, и вы это будете руководить страной, предприятиями, ведомствами, вы это будете слушать. Зарплата. Дайте больше. Не настраивайте себя на это. Никому, никто ничего не даст. Жизнь становится более сложной, конкуренция жуткая. Главное для государства – предоставить возможности. Вот мы предоставляем вам возможности с раннего возраста, чтобы вы посмотрели, на что вы способны, и пытались это реализовать в себе. Поэтому есть некоторые, которые по улицам бродят и жвачку жуют. Может, и это полезно и надо, не знаю. А есть те, вот вы, которые с раннего возраста, благодаря родителям и вашему таланту, пришли и пашете здесь. Сначала с интересом, потом уже появится напряжение определенное. Не все будет в жизни интересно, но вы, сжав зубы, идете к своей цели или просто движетесь по этой жизни. И такие люди никогда не просят «дай». Зарплату, там еще чего-то. Они сами творят свою жизнь.
This is brainwashing done at its best. Now, this isn't the first time that Lukashenko has surprised people with his candor. If anyone perceived this statement as cynicism, they were mistaken. It's simply a new strategy of Belarusian-style honesty. First, you tell the truth. Then, you don't let anything change, and the result is pure stability. The economic realities of Belarus remain challenging. Sanctions, declining exports, and an aimlessly drifting economy hooked up to Moscow's life support. In such conditions, talk of stability instead of growth sounds not just honest, it sounds like an official rejection of development. It's almost as if Lukashenko is ahead of the curve. While other politicians promise a brighter future, he seems to be on his way to becoming a protagonist in a variation on an old joke. How many Belarusian officials does it take to replace a light bulb? None. Lukashenko waltzes into the room and proclaims that darkness is now standard. And that's all for this episode of Break the Fake here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching, and until next time.